Alright guys, welcome back. So we're going to go over some of the deck tech cards that go into this deck to make it work like it's supposed to and work as efficiently as possible. Um, so first of all, the Locust God does work off of drawing cards. So we're gonna go over all the cards that enable that to happen more than usual. So first of all, we got Ristic Study. Ristic Study basically says that whenever anyone casts a spell, they can pay an additional 1, and if they don't, then this triggers and I draw a card. And with Locust on the field, it lets me create a 1/1 green and red insect token with haste. Next, we do have Nezahal. Nezahal is really good because he can't be countered. He does have no maximum mana size on a stick. And then he does have Mystic Remora, which is whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, I draw a card. And then you can't pay for that, so it's you have to. And then of course you can discard 3 cards and exile Nezahal to return him to the battlefield. Now this is really good because we are going to be drawing a lot of cards in this deck, so we will have a huge hand size a lot, and so if you're like late in the game and you have like 20 lands out, you can just discard 3 lands and protect him from being destroyed, which makes him, in my opinion, really, really good. So next we have Niv-Mizzet, the Firemind. He just basically allows you to be able to ping any like small creatures that can get in the way. And then he also allows you to tap him and draw a card. And whenever you draw a card, he deals 1 damage to any target. Not to mention, he is a 4/4 flyer, so that's a pretty good blocker as well. Next, we have Treasure Cruise. With Treasure Cruise, there is a lot of instant or sorcery, so we are going to be casting. So there will be a bunch of cards in our graveyard. So this is really good because most of the time you can just pay 1 blue and cast Treasure Cruise, drawing 3 cards, creating 3 bugs. If you have Niv-Mizzet on the board, dealing 3 damage. So yeah, that's another really good draw spell in there. Next, we do have Standstill. Standstill is really good because you play it on turn 2 and people want to play their spells to get caught up with everybody, and if you do, well, you just get to draw 3 cards. It's more or less for an early game to get a bit more hand size, but if you do draw it with the Locust God out in the field, it's still really good. So you do get 3 bugs out of that, and it causes your opponents not to cast many spells, so yeah. Next, we do have Teferi's Puzzle Box. Teferi's Puzzle Box is really good because we will have a huge maximum hand size, or a huge hand size, so at the beginning of our upkeeps, if we have 10 cards in hand, we're going to be drawing 10 cards and creating 10 bugs with the Locust God. So that's just 10 power on the board right there, not to mention they do have haste. So you can either infinite combo off or just attack with all your bugs. And it's really good. So next, we do have Dictative Crewfix. Dictative Crewfix is really good because it has flash. It doesn't really matter if it benefits your opponents or not. In the most, with your God out, it does benefit you. So yeah, that's just 2 more bugs out. So let's get on to the next one. We do got Paradoxical Outcome. So Paradoxical Outcome basically lets you return all your bugs to your hand. Oh, no, never mind. Lets you return a bunch of permanents to your hand, but I play quite a few cheap artifacts and enchantments, so you play those, then you can return them to your hand and draw that many cards and create that many bugs. That's just in there because you can also use it to protect your board. And so, yeah, it's pretty good. It protects your board and it draws you cards. Next, we do have Ponder. Ponder basically lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. And if you don't like any of those cards, you can shuffle them, and then you draw a card. So basically, it's a turn 1 draw. You can also save it for the Locust card and get another bug, of course. So, yeah. Next, we do have a Chemist's Insight. Chemist's Insight is really good because it does have Jumpstart, which when it's in your graveyard, you can discard a card and play it from your graveyard, so it's kind of like Flashback. So basically, it's just pay 4 and draw 2 cards. It does have instant speed, so you can do it at the end of someone's turn, so that by the time it's your turn, you do have your bugs or extra cards to use. So that's why that's in there. Next, we do have Consecrated Sphinx. Consecrated Sphinx basically is a game-winning piece. You have a bunch of spells in here that can make others draw cards, and if you have this out, you're going to want to make others draw cards as much as possible, so then you can draw a lot of cards and create an army of bugs. And like I said, most draw spells are instant speed, so you can do it at the end of someone's turn and again have that army of 1/1 bugs ready to attack on your turn. So yeah. Next, we do have Biden Athasa. Biden Athasa is really good because all of our bugs are 1/1 and they have flying, so a lot of the time people aren't going to be able to block them. And whenever one of those 1/1 bugs with flying deals combat damage, you draw a card, and then you create another bug. And then you can also pay 2 and tap it and make them attack. So if the creatures don't have vigilance, then they have to attack with their flyers, so they'll tap it, and then they won't be able to block you next turn. So then you can draw that many cards again. So yeah, that's really good because it's a really, really good draw engine in this deck. Next, we do have Fact or Fiction. It's one of those draw spells that, not really draw spells, basically look and put them into your hand. But it is instant speed, which is the main part why it's in here. It is also really good because it lets you it's a 4-draw and it has potential, or it's a 4-drop and it has the potential to draw you 5 cards. So, like if you're playing like 2-headed giant and you choose someone and they say, oh, I'll put 5 in one and 0 in the other. Oh, okay, I'll take the card pile with 5 in it. You know, so that's really good in there because it does basically refresh your hand. Next, we do have Wheel of Fate. Wheel of Fate, a lot of times you can play this on turn 2 and then have it go off the turn before you play your commander. So therefore you get 7 bugs right away. It's really good because it's really cheap in it, and the only time people can counter it is when it comes off a suspend. So it does work out very, very well. So yeah, wheels are really good in draw decks that have interactions when you draw. So here we have Mole Drifter. Mole Drifter is really good because, well, you can, if it's later in the game, you can pay 5 and have it be a blocker. But you can also just evoke him, which says whenever you cast a spell for its evoke cost, it's sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. That doesn't matter because its enter the battlefield effects is you draw 2 cards. So basically you're paying 3 to draw 2. And I think that that's really good. Next we have Mystic Remora. Again, I talked about this with Nezahal. Basically, it has cumulative upkeep 1. So you play this for 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you have to pay 1 or sacrifice it. And then your next upkeep, you have to pay 2, and the next 3, and so on. But basically, it says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, they have to pay for. And if they don't, then the person controlling this draws a card. So I draw a card, thus creating another 1/1 bug. So yeah, that's really good. Next we do have Niv Mizzet Perun. This guy's pretty good because he can't be countered. He has flying. He does, whenever you draw a card, deal 1 damage to any target, and whenever any player casts an instant or sorcery spell, I draw a card. So that counts as me as well. So whenever you're countering stuff, or whenever a spell's countered, no matter what, they cast it, so you do get a draw card and ping something. It's really good to get little pesky creatures off the field, like Priest of Titania, or Edric, or little elves. Next, we do have Narset. Narset isn't really a draw engine, but she's in here because there's quite a few wheels in here. And she says that her static effect says that each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. So basically, you wheel, you get to draw 7 cards, and they get to draw 1. So basically, you have a full hand, and they're down to 1 card each. So they won't be able to have many responses to your stuff. If you board wipe them, they won't be able to respond that well. And yeah, not to mention it does let you look at the top 4 cards of your library and reveal a non-creature non-land from among them and put it in your hand. So basically it's like search for Azcanta without having to pay mana. So yeah, that's pretty good. Next we do have Cerebral Vortex. So Cerebral Vortex does have the ability to draw you 2 cards, or like if you have Consecrated Sphinx out, you can make target player draw 2 cards. And then you draw 4. Then it deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards they've drawn this turn. So this is good for a number of reasons. 1, it does have the ability to draw you 2 cards to create bugs. 2, if someone tries to win the game by drawing a bunch of cards or playing Enter the Infinite, you can play this and deal 80-something damage to them. Or if they play Enter the Infinite and they draw 2, then they're dead, unless they have a Laboratory Maniac out. So it's really, really good card. I didn't put it in here just for its draw ability. I did it to stop people from winning the game, because usually when people draw their decks out, it's over. But if you have this in hand, then you have a pretty good chance at winning the game. So next we do have Crackling Drake. With Crackling Drake, we do have a bunch of cards that exile themselves. So like we have Force of Will in here, Force of Negation. We have again the Chemist's Insight, which has Jumpstart, which exiles it. Not to mention, when he does enter the battlefield, he does let you draw a card. So he's a really huge attacker, and he does enable you to draw a card. So, not to mention he flies, so he's pretty good. Next, we do have Preordain. Preordain lets you scry 2 and draw a card. Unfortunately, it's a sorcery, but it's just to help you out in early game. Not really a big draw spell. It doesn't really do much for the Locust God. Only draws you 1 card, but still lets you scry 2, so it's pretty good. Next, we have Combustible Gearhulk. Combustible Gearhulk is really good because if you have like Fabricate, you can search for him. But he has the potential to let you draw 3 cards and get a 6/6 body on the board with First Strike. So it is really, really good. But it also deals them damage as well if they choose not to, which there's a bunch of high cost spells in this deck. So yeah. Next we do have Opt. Opt is another one of those early game instant speed draw spells that I put in here. It does just let you get a bit ahead from your opponents, so you can be able to play some rocks or get your Locust God out as fast as possible. So yeah. Next we do have Expansion Explosion. Expansion Explosion basically says, so Expansion says, choose target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less, and you can choose new targets for the copy. So basically, if someone plays a counter spell, you can copy that counter spell and counter their counter. But then there's also the explosion part, which is really good because you pay 4 on X and deal X damage to any target, and then target player draws X cards. So you can deal 10 damage to someone, and then you draw 10 cards, therefore creating 10 bugs. So it has very good. It has two very good effects, and it does work out quite well. Next we have Brainstorm. Brainstorm lets you draw 3 cards and then put 2 on top. It is pretty good with the Locust God, but like I said at the beginning of the game, it can help you get some rocks out to get your Locust God out as fast as possible. Next we do have Windfall. Windfall basically lets everybody wheel, and if you have a huge maximum hand size like 20, then everyone's going to draw 20, and when you draw 20, you're going to be able to create 20 bugs. And then if you do have the Cerebral Vortex in your hand, you can deal 20 damage to someone. So it is pretty good. But if you do have Narset out, like again, your opponents will only draw 1 card, but you'll draw like 20 and create 20 bugs. So you'll be at a huge advantage at that point. So now we're going to get into the control part of this build. That was all the draw effects that enabled the Locust God to create the army of 1/1 bugs. So the first control card that I put in here is Propaganda. Propaganda is pretty good because a lot of the time they're not going to be able to have the mana to attack you, and if they have like infinite creatures, they're not going to be able to pay all that mana to pay 2 for each creature, unless of course they have infinite mana, but it just slows them down a bit to give you a bit more time to be able to get your combo off. But it does work. So next we do have Mizzium Meddler. Mizzium Meddler is kind of like a Spellskite. So if someone tries to Path of Exile your Locust God, you can in response flash this guy in and change the target of Path to Exile from your Locust God to the Mizzium Meddler. So instead they're exiling this creature. You do get a land still, but you also get to keep your Locust God on the field. Next we do have Arcane Denial. Arcane Denial is just a classic counterspell. It is a very good one. It doesn't let them draw 2 cards, but it also lets you draw 1, therefore creating another bug. So it is pretty good. And it only costs 2, so. Next we have Narset's Reversal. Narset's Reversal is really good because not only can it copy like any spell, but like if someone plays like a Blue Sun Zenith for like their deck, you can pay 2 and copy it. Now Blue Sun Zenith, the way X spells work is when they pay X into them on the stack, the X plus the colored mana is the converted mana cost, so when you copy it, it does copy it for that converted mana cost, because it copies the spell with the exact same mana cost. So you do get to draw as many cards as they do and create an army of bugs. Next we do have Rewind. Rewind is basically a free counterspell. You just countercard a spell and tap up to 4 lands. It does cost 4, so it's pretty good. I don't have Unwind in here because it's not really that good to me. It only counters a creature spell, and I'm not a fan of it. Next we have Negate. Negate just costs 2 and it counters target non-creature spell. So if someone tries to counter your counter, you can just tap 2 and negate it. And it's just really cheap, really nice counter spell to have in here. Next we have Swan Song. Swan Song is basically a really good counter spell, so because it only costs 1, you get a 2/2 bird, but it's still really good. It unfortunately only targets enchantment, instant, and sorcery spells. But if someone plays like a Soul Ring on turn 1, you can just counter that, or like a Surtress Cantor or any really good enchantment that they play, you can counter it. Next we have Force of Negation. Force of Negation basically allows you to tap all your mana so you don't, to be able to play spells on your turn. And then you don't have to hold up mana for this because you can exile a blue card from your hand and counter target non-creature spell. So basically it's a free counter spell. And with Crackling Drake, if you exile a blue spell, it'll still count towards his attack. So next we do have Disallow. Disallow does let you counter target spell, but it also lets you counter target activated ability or triggered ability. So if someone tries to activate a Planeswalker or alt a Planeswalker, you can tap 3 and disallow it, so that they have to pay the loyalty, but there's no effect because you countered it. Because activating a Planeswalker for its loyalty cost is an activated ability, so you can counter that. Next, we do have Sinister Sabotage. Sinister Sabotage says counter target spell, but it's really good. It is a bit more on the expensive side, but you do get to surveil 1, which is kind of like scrying. Instead of putting it on the bottom of your library, you can put it in your graveyard or keep it on top, but it's still really good. Next, we do have Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is a really good one because if someone tries to attack you with infinite dudes, you can just Cyclonic Rift Overload and return them to your hand. Or if, say, someone's playing Xenagos, and they have a Crater Hoof out, and they decide to put the Xenagos trigger on their biggest creature and attack you with 40 damage, you can just Cyclonic Rift that thing to their hand. So you can do single target or overload. Next we have Reality Shift. Basically the same reason of Cyclonic Rift, you can exile a target creature. They do get to manifest the top card of the library, but a lot of times that's really nothing. But it is really good because it only costs 2. So next we do have a Force of Will. Again, along with the Force of Negation, you can tap all your mana to play spells, and then all you have to do is exile a blue card from your hand to counter target spell. So very, very good counter spell. Next we have Dream Fracture. Dream Fracture does counter target spell, then its controller gets to draw a card, and you also get to draw a card and create a bug. If it didn't have the I draw a card, then I probably would not play that spell. Next we do have Ionize. Ionize counters spell and then deals 2 damage to its controller. It's one of the pretty good newer counter spells, and it fits the deck very well because it is the guild colors. Next we have Commit to Memory. Commit to Memory does counter a spell or return a permanent to their owner's hand, but it also has Memory, which wheels with Aftermath. So you get to draw 7 cards and create 7 bugs. And if you have Narset out, then everyone else just draws 1. So again, it's really, really good. So next we're going to get into the artifacts of this deck. And a lot of them are pretty good. A lot of them enable you to win the game. So this one we have Lightning Greaves. Lightning Greaves is for like creature if you have Locust God out, or if you have like Consecrated Sphinx out and you need to protect them. It works really, really well for that. So, not to mention it does give them haste, so that's good. Next we do have Soul Ring. Soul Ring is just good in general. It's technically better than a Black Lotus, because Black Lotus is only 3 mana once, and this is 1 mana for 2 colorless forever. So, in some ways it is very, very good. Next we have Swiftfoot Boots. Again, with the Lightning Greaves, it's there to protect your creatures so that people can't mess with them. And it does give them haste as well. So, next we do have Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt is another one that you can play on turn 2 and have 4 mana. It does deal you damage, but it's still a really, really good card. And it sets you ahead a lot. Next, we have Walking Ballista. So Walking Ballista enables you to... So if you have infinite mana, and someone casts a card that says the card Locust God can't be played, basically you have another win con in here. So if you can't play the Locust God, you do have Walking Ballista. So you can just empty all your mana into that and deal everybody infinite damage. Next, we do have Ugin. Ugin's really good because he's just a solid board wipe. Not to mention he does deal damage, and his Neg 10 ability does let you draw 7 cards. Of course, you're not going to always get that off, but still it's pretty good to have in there. Next, we have Chromatic Lantern. Chromatic Lantern does filter your mana, but it also acts as a rock itself. But if you need blue up and you only have a certain amount, then Chromatic Lantern is really good for that. And last but not least, we do have Sensei's Divining Top. Sensei's Divining Top does let you go infinite with Future Sight and Ethereum Sculptor, or Cloud Key, but it also is just a really good card in general. So next up, we're going to look at a couple of the cards that do let you fetch any of the spells that we talked about earlier. We do have Merchant Scroll, which lets you search for blue instant and put it into your hand. So that's really good if you want to get like a Cyclonic Rift or a Force Will to be able to counter someone's spell. Next, we do have Mystical Tutor. Again, it's for searching for an instant or sorcery card. It is very, very good. It does put it on your deck, but you do draw a lot of cards. So next, we do have Fabricate. Fabricate lets you search for an artifact card. So any of the artifacts we went over, you can go and grab. You can even go and grab Combustible Gearhole because he's an artifact creature and put him into your hand. So that's a very good spell to have in here. Next, we do have Search for Azcanta. Search for Azcanta does let you filter your draws. Not to mention, it does let you look at the top 4, and basically it's Narset, but on a land. So it's a lot harder to get rid of. So we're going to get into a couple of miscellaneous cards in here. So the first one's going to be Leyline of Anticipation. Leyline of Anticipation is really good because you can basically play all your sorceries and instants and creatures as flash. Not to mention, if you have it in your opening hand, you can play it for free. So it's really good in that way. Next, we have Future Sight. Again, it does go infinite with Sensei's Divining Top and Ethereum Sculptor. It is a really good card to have on its own, though. The 3 blue was kind of rough, but it's still a very, very good enchantment. Next, we do have Ral, Izzet Viceroy. Again, there's a lot of instant or sorcery spells in here. So, and it does count for them in exile, so when you play Force Will or something, it's going to count that spell. So, basically, he said his +1 says, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your, and the other one into your graveyard. And then his neg 3 is deal damage to any target equal to the number of instant or sorcery spells in your graveyard and in exile. So I've hit someone for 15 with this once. Because you have a lot of spells that you're casting, you're going to have a lot of cards in your graveyard that do deal a lot of damage. Next, we have Nexus of Fate. Nexus of Fate is really good because it does enable you to take an extra turn, but it also protects you from mill. So you can basically draw your entire deck out and then discard it and put it back into your deck and basically take infinite turns. So I think it's very underrated extra turn spell, not to mention it does have instant speed. It is 7, so it is on the expensive side, but it's still worth it. Next, we have Reliquary Tower. Again, with this deck, we are going to be drawing a lot of cards, so to have no maximum hand size is really, really good in this deck. Alright, and finally, we're going to go through and show you how this deck wins. So, we have 2 different combos in here. So, first combo, you tap 5 lands. you play a Peregrine Drake. That untaps your lands. Untaps 5 lands. So basically you just paid 0, 4, 2, 3, right? Next you play Archaeomancer. Get back any of the spells that you've cast this game. It doesn't really matter which one. Probably a counter spell, so that if someone tries to counter your combo, you can counter them back so that they can't stop you from winning. And next we have Ghostly Flicker. When you play Ghostly Flicker, you can blink 2 target artifacts, creatures, and/or lands you control, and return those cards to the battlefield under your control instantly. So basically, what you're going to do is you're going to blink these 2. You're going to take Peregrine Drake out, put him back, and you're going to take Archaeomancer, put him back. When Peregrine Drake comes into the battlefield, so when these enter the battlefield, this is resolved and it's in your graveyard, okay? When this enters, you untap 5 lands. When this enters, you return Ghostly Flicker back to your hand. Then you play it again. You blink these 2, you untap 5 lands, and you return Ghostly Flicker to your hand. You just keep doing that infinitely, and while untapping 5 lands, this only costs 3, so you're floating 2 mana each time you cast that. So eventually it does get infinite, and then you do have Walking Ballista. You can use Walking Ballista's ability to deal people infinite damage. You can also use his ability, which says pay 4, draw a card, then discard a card, which creates you bees. So that's one infinite combo. The second one we have does include Peregrine Drake. It's Peregrine Drake and Deadeye Navigator. When Deadeye Navigator enters the battlefield, he has Soul Bond, and whenever he is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has pay 1 in the blue, exile target this creature, and then return it to the battlefield under your control. So basically, you put this in, you Soul Bond it with Peregrine Drake, then you can pay 2 and floating the extra 3. Blink Peregrine Drake and untap 5. Pay 2, float an extra 3. Blink Peregrine Drake, untap 5, which enables you to get infinite mana again to win the game. So the only non-basics that I'm running in here are Reliquary Tower, then we have Steam Vents, which is just a dual-colored land. We do have Flooded Strand to go over and fetch your Steam Vents. We do have Mana Confluence, because that's just a bit more mana fixing to be able to get whatever color you need. You do have Silver Falls, which most of the time enters untapped. And then you have Command Tower. Basically, these lands just enable you to filter your colors and be able to have the right colors at the right time. So yeah, that's my Locust God deck. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to play, and pretty good build, I think. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to go ahead and drop a like or subscribe. If you do end up building the deck, leave a comment and tell me how it's going and how you like it and stuff. So yeah, alrighty, well, that's the end of the vid. Thanks for watching.